Contradictions in the Gospels is usually the only thing people want to talk about when they're trying to figure out if they're historically reliable or not. But there's something that not many people discuss, and that's the undesigned coincidences between the four Gospels. These are coincidences that you would not expect from people who are colluding to fabricate a story. These are the things that show the authors are recording an event rather than them making it up or it being a later addition. And it shows it be very unlikely that these stories are myths that developed over the years via the telephone game. An example of this would be in John 6, when people were traveling for Passover and Jesus feeds the 5,000 with 2 fish. If we go into verse 5, we see Jesus ask Philip where he could buy bread so that the people around them may eat. Philip answers Jesus and says that even 200 denarii worth of bread would not be sufficient to feed everyone. And then in verse 8, Andrew says that there is a boy nearby with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Now this might seem arbitrary at first, but there's a reason that Jesus asked Philip and Andrew felt inclined to help. And the reason for that is the two of them are from Bethsaida, according to John 1:44. So they were locals to the area. So it makes sense for Jesus to ask Philip because he would know. Except there's one major problem with this. The Gospel of John never says where they were during the time of this miracle, the feeding of the 5,000. All it says is that he went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. The problem is the last place Jesus was, according to the Gospel of John, was Jerusalem, which is significantly south of the Sea of Galilee. And the sea itself is surrounded by several towns, not just Bethsaida. If we read John as a self-contained gospel, he asked Philip arbitrarily, until we go look at Luke 9:10. That tells us that the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 happened near Bethsaida. With the information that we get from Luke, we now know why he would pick Philip to handle this specific problem of finding food in this area. But if we take this a step further and we go to Mark 6:31, the same miracle event, we see people are coming and going, but it never explains to us why people are coming and going. But if we go back to the Gospel of John, like I said earlier, it was because it was Passover. People were traveling for that. And in both the Gospel of John and the Gospel of Mark, they make a note about how green the grass was or how grown out it was. And Passover during this time period would have fell between the end of March or the end of April. And considering the precipitation cycles that we see for this area, this is what we would expect to see during this time period. Green, flourishing grass. Now, this is just an example of an undesigned coincidence, and we could explain some of them away, but each one adds a layer of complexity. And those complexities make it more and more difficult to keep the theory that these are later additions or myths that grew over time. It shows that the authors are recording real events that actually happened, or they happen to all get together and make up this crazy complex story that just so happens to fit together perfectly with these small complexities. In Lydia McGrew's listings of undesigned coincidences, on 9 occasions, the Synoptic Gospels explain John. On 6 occasions, John explains the Synoptics. And on 4 occasions, the Synoptics explain each other. This makes it very unlikely that this is a built-on narrative that was added onto over time, considering that it goes back and forth in these minor ways. We would not expect to see this attention to detail from myths that grew over time. Now, this doesn't prove that Jesus is God and rose from the dead, even though that is true, he did, but it does add to the likelihood that the Gospels are trustworthy, historical, accurate documents, written by people doing their very best to record actual historical events. You might be able to explain some of this away, but like I said, each layer makes it more difficult to do so. If these were myths developed over time, we would not expect to see that the Gospels explain parts of the story that are missing from other Gospels. And this is not just filling in the gaps. When you put that together, it makes sense of the narrative. Like I said, in one Gospel, it never explains why people are coming and going. But in the Gospel of John, it fills that out. It says it's Passover. In John, it never explains why he would ask Philip. But in the Synoptics, it explains because Philip was a local to that area. And again, these are very small details, not big details. It's not something that you would expect from people inventing a narrative. It's tiny things that you don't even notice unless you're specifically looking for it. Anyways, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more content like this, also let me know. And please remember to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the notifications so you don't miss any future content. And if you want to support me and my ministry, you could do so on Patreon. Links are down below also. Thank you so much and have yourself a great day.